Now it's time for me to try something completely different. I usually prefer tube amps, and at that I prefer old school British voiced amps. I own Marshall and Vox style amps, but I wanted to try a Fender again. And my first choice doesn't even have tubes. I found Fender's Tone Master concept interesting ever since it was first released, but I hated them when I tried them in a store once. But that was years ago, and I wanted to try one again in my own space with my own gear. The main reason is that I want to get a small amp that I can play around the house, but I also want something that gives me a different sound that I also can use live or in the studio. I do have the Universal Audio Lion with a power amp, but the Tone Master is one thing and it looks good as it looks like a tube amp. So without further ado, here we go. What you just heard is what I'm hoping to be able to do with this amp, and that's playing some good old rock and roll. And I have to admit, it took some time to get used to it doing it with an amp like this, not because it's a modeler, but because it's a Fender. I used to play Fenders for years, but over the past couple of years, I've been playing something pretty different. So let's start off in the realm of things that you get to expect from a blackface Fender. I will keep it on the edge of breakup, no pedals, just the reverb and the tremolo of the amp itself. The first thing I notice is that the decay on the reverb is extremely long, but besides that, the sound is nice, although I notice something in the breakup that makes me wonder if it's a digital thing or just the way a Deluxe Reverb breaks up. So let's check some more, but this time use a normal telly. I think the amp sounded a lot better here, but I think usually these kind of Fender amps sound best with Fender guitars. What I'm more curious about is how it will handle my Gibsons. So I will switch back and forth between my Humbucker and P90 SGs and try to get a good sound out of that. I definitely had a harder time dialing in the sound using these two guitars, especially with the humbuckers. The sound is good, but I think I've heard both guitars sound a lot better with different amps. I also accidentally recorded just the IR while tracking these parts, and I was, well, you could say, unpleasantly surprised. So far you've been hearing the real SM57, the IR of the SM57 that's in the Tone Master, and a MXL ribbon mic. I think the IR sounds okay when you're clean, but once you push beyond that, I think it thins out way too much. Let me switch between all three of them so you can get an idea. Personally, I wouldn't want that sound to go to the front of house if I'm playing a live gig. I've been using IRs for multiple years now, and I think the Tone Master is lacking in that department. Also, I think it's still pretty loud at the lowest setting if you want to get the amp at the edge of breakup or beyond. With the attenuator, I don't understand why they chose to use a step control that emulates tube wattage settings. Of course that would make sense for a tube amp, but this is a digital solid state amp, and I think a master volume knob would have made much more sense and would have been much more useful. To get to a point, I'll close off using a guitar that usually sounds good through any amp I play it through, and I will go from clean to crazy to show you how the amp handles that. I think this amp is a great concept, it sounds good and it doesn't feel like a modeler to me. If you like the tube version, I can see you liking this Tone Master version. I still think the reverb, the volume control and the IR need some work, and I also think it's too expensive for what it is. Also, I had a hard time dialing in my effects for this amp in a way that I'm not used to over the past couple of years with all the other amps or modelers I tried. It was way pickier with pedals and different settings on pedals, and it choked out when boosting it too hard. But that's coming from someone who thinks it's a good amp, but I guess these kinds of Fenders just aren't my thing anymore. It all sounded good and decent, but it never really got me excited, and I think that's a personal thing. I still hope that companies like Vox and Marshall are going to do a similar thing. Let me know what you think of Tone Masters in the comments down below, and while you're down there, please like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and I'll see you next time.